The World Is Not Enough was Pierce Brosnan's third Bond film in just 4 years. David Arnold, of course, this is his second effort. People often, I don't know, Tomorrow Never Dies seems to be absolutely loved by so many Bond films as one of the best of all time. So I think this is a more nuanced score. I think there's far more to it.
Yeah.
As Harry will argue, there's too much drum and bass, particularly in the the boat chase, and all that. You get the bugle, don't you, for the then
better than a penny whistle.
No. They're both good. They're both brilliant.
Yeah.
Yes, but I think Electra's theme is, I hate the word underrated again, but it really is. I think the instrumental of it is a bit like John Barry. Sometimes it didn't work as much in the song, but here it works brilliantly in both, I think, and it has that sort of more melancholy, that mysterious nature to it, and yet it forms a really majestic, sweeping part of the score at the same time. And again, Tom, you just did that sort of quick edit of all the times that Electra's themes played, and even that little highlight reel shows how different they are.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I kind of get why they didn't, because I'm a fan of what they went with in the end, and it would have been a bit of a downer. But I do
Yeah.
wish they'd used one of myself to blame over the end credits, just because, like you say, it does, with it being Electra's theme, it does tie everything in a bit more thematically. I agree with what you're saying. It is, I think, more of a, I guess, yeah, nuance is probably a good work compared to Tomorrow Never Dies. I mean, I love Tomorrow Never Dies as a score. I think it's, if I had to pick between the two, I may side with that, just because it feels so much like a John Barry continuation in some ways, and I love everything about it.
I'm going to say it was his love of Barry. He wanted to throw. I mean, he didn't know whether he was going to do another film, did he?
No.
So he threw everything at it.
You could tell, this was like a guy who'd had these ideas for, years, and it was so thrilled to do it. But
based on that as well, but carry on.
But when you look at something like The World Is Not Enough, like I say, it is, he's getting into his like motif phase, basically, because there's a few in Tomorrow Never Dies, like Elliot Carver has a motif which, if you listen to like the expanded score, this other few when they came out a few years ago, it's in a few of the cut tracks and the alternate tracks. It's not as much of a presence in the actual film as it is in some of the unused things. But of course, when you get to The World Is Enough, like obviously as we see, Electra's got a very prominent motif. Renard has two. He's got this little descending piano, and he's got the wah 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 sort of and it's really great. And I said there's the love motif, and obviously the Bond theme and all of its little variations, and so it does feel like it's tying things together. Like one of my favorite tracks actually is when we were talking before about that scene where Renard and Electra sort of get together at Maiden's Tower, and that's where you kind of becomes obvious you want to start working together. Arnold uses this really great score where it's Electra's theme like as a underpinning it, but it's got the Renard throughout it, and it's sort of their two themes merged together that you've heard throughout the film, and it's really great. Like I think, again, I hate to use like the word of the time, like underrated, but it is like, I do, even though obviously I think a lot of people love David Arnold's scores and I hear a lot of positive things about it, like I do think it's more of a mature thing than people give it credit for, because like to me, like Down of the Days, when he fully went into the drum and bass, that's where I'm like, there's too much drum and bass. But I think I still love it. I still love the Down of the Day score. But I think The World's Not Enough is that great middle ground between the Barry sound and the Arnold sound in this motif work, and the whole thing is beautiful. I love it.
The ski scene is perhaps his most majestic, most Barry thing.
Yeah.
And that is repeated in Down of the Day as well. And the piano version of it at the end, again, Sam used on Nightfire.
I mean, there's a certain like motif that is definitely kind of, it feels very much like this is as close as you're going to get to like a John Barry, like romantic, crescendo piece. So to kind of have that be kind of like a running theme, obviously not as not in as many things as we'd probably like, but there to at least go, that reminds me of this and that reminds me of that. It's very similar. I think that's great. I mean, I'll say this is my favorite David Arnold uh, Bond soundtrack. It's the one that I go back to the most. I think Tom's absolutely right in terms of like the balance of, it's a bit Barry, but it has Arnold's own, flavor, as well as kind of having that electronic kind of element to it, which I think makes this so much more unique. And I do think Dine of Day goes a bit too far. But, with this, I think the pipeline uh, piece of music is probably one of my favorites because it really feels like it's leading up and it's building up, as this time is going down. I think only myself to blame. I would have loved to have heard, even if it was somehow used, in a diegetic way. If it was like, so a bit like from Rush with Love was, like it's actually in the background of something, so you can still kind of hear it. I think one of the best things about this score, and I think a lot of as some people on here will know, is when they did the sound of 007 in Albert Hall and we heard Come in 007 Your Time Is Up, and to actually hear that played live was one of like the best experiences of that entire thing, because I don't think there was ever a point where I thought I'm going to hear that, being played, at least that interpretation. And it was done so well. And yeah, I think it's a score that resonates with me. And as much as I think Tomorrow Never Dies is a really fun one, and I think there's so much classic Barry in there. I feel like this is the one that makes the mark on this era, and especially of David Arnold's Brosnan tenure anyway.
Thankfully, John and I did the Cue the Music did it, didn't they? This last time, Coming 007 with Exhilarating is brilliant. I think I do agree thematically at the end that should be the theme that was used. I just think the way I know I've said this before, I just think the way it's sung is not appropriate. Oh, it's not. It needs like a proper, more dramatic,
Shirley Bassey.
No, I think that's too over the top. It needs It needs to be more subtle.
More underrated.
Yeah, more strings, perhaps.
Overstated.
Yeah.
So you got Pierce Brosnan to do it, like in Mamma Mia.
Yeah. This used to be so good. Yeah. Yeah, Griff, right? The song, the Garbage song. You a fan of this?
Yeah, I love it.
Good.
I thought I was quite a big fan of Garbage anyway.
Oh right, good. Okay.
I think I remember the music video. I'm trying to like.
Brilliant.
Is it not her as like?
Yeah.
Things coming up.
Like a robot.
So underrated.
I've not seen that. I've not seen the music video in years. I just think it sounds like a Bond song, and it's great, and the whole like the world, just the build up, and it just flows. And I think that got the oil with the girls in the. Yeah, I can't fault it.
I never sort of rate it as one of my best, but like I agree, I can't fault it. I think it's perfect for the film. You're using the themes that Barry has brought, Arnold's brought to this film, and yeah, I like the vocal. I think it works.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
The lyrics.
The lyrics are great. Yeah.
They're talking about it from the perspective of a lecturer, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it has the line, "There's no point living if you can't feel alive." So
you can't leave alive. Yeah.
No one mentions that. A bit like they don't mention the two of a kind is in the script of Octopussy. We are two of a kind. No one mentions that's in the song All Time High. They don't want it.
I mean, I have to say that I love Straw's title track, the one that they sang. Like that was No, only because it does references as well. It's like, that has "We've Got All the Time in the World" in the lyrics, and that's when it's like just another, if they went in a different direction, I could totally see that working out so well. I think I'm happy with Garbage and the title track that we got, but I think I love when there's those kind of lost gems of ones of what could have been that equally would have worked, or for some people would have been even better.
But that reminds me though that, again, to advertise, Sam did a brilliant article for License to Queer comparing The World Is Not Enough with On Her Majesty's Secret Service. And again, we could be here hours and hours just going on about that, but the themes are brilliant, the motifs, the visual, just tiny little things, like the outfits that they're wearing skiing, just things like that. Fantastic. So definitely give that a read.
I did really enjoy. Again, partly because of the director, Michael Apted, who's a lovely man.
Oh,
was Twine.
Yeah, great film.
You know, the things that we did on that with the, submarine shooting out in the Bahamas, everybody thinks, oh, off to the Bahamas, on the jolly. Yeah, it was lovely. We had a nice hotel, had its own golf course, if you ever got the time to play on it.
Mm-hmm.
But, we were going out to sea every day. We had sea lice to contend with. We had fish that latched themselves onto the model, thinking the model was a bigger fish. So we were forever chasing them off. Sharks swimming by while we were doing it. We were 120 feet down, and we were, about 100 feet away from the Atlantic drop-off, where it just went down 3,000 feet.
Oh, my word.
I'd got this big boat that we were using as a mothership. We had the ability to lift the model in and out of the water. I mean, the model weighed several tons, and it was 60-odd feet long.
Yeah.
It had its own flotation in it, and motors and air things and whatever. But we still had to control it and keep it on wires for safety. And whenever we broke for lunch, I'd make sure or ask the divers to put the safety tethers on it and pull it in, hang it under the mothership. One day we'd broken for lunch and we were up on the deck, and I said to the divers, you did put the safeties on the model, didn't you, when we came up? And they all sort of went pale and looked at one another.
Oh, no.
Looked over the side, and there was the model bouncing along the bottom, going towards the drop-off.
Oh, no.
If it had gone over the edge, I mean, we'd have lost. I hate to think what would have happened.
Yeah.
And you've never seen five guys put air tanks on so quickly. I mean, I think I was the first one down there. And I managed to get hold of the front of the sub and dig my heels in the sand, while the rest of them got ropes and cables over, and we pulled it back and made it safe. But, scary little moments like that do make life more interesting sometimes.
How was the boat chase in Twine? Because we love Twine; it's great. But the miniature boat and then the actual sorting the sequence out, the final product's incredible. How was it for you guys in special effects?
Well, that was all done for real. The only model that was involved in that was I had a very small model that we fired out of the MI6 building.
Stop! You didn't finish! Stop!
That started the sequence off. After that, it was all real boats racing up and down. We did the balloon over the Millennium Dome.
Yeah.
That blowing up.
The first time I saw The World Is Not Enough at the time, I had it on VHS tape when I was like 10 years old. My parents had bought me the VHS tape of The World Is Not Enough. At the time, I had the movie tie-in video game based off the movie on the PlayStation 1 and Nintendo 64, and both of them were fun games at the time. As a kid, I loved them. And I remember I got the VHS tape of The World Is Not Enough. I watched it like a bunch of times and I loved it. And over the years, I just started putting it as one of my favorites. Over the years, I just fell in love with it.
What is it about The World Is Not Enough that sort of sets it apart from the other Pierce Brosnan films?
I love his two. GoldenEye always gonna be my first because that's my first Bond movie. I always love GoldenEye because that's my first, and it's an excellent movie. Tomorrow Never Dies is my second. Love Tomorrow Never Dies, but The World Is Not Enough. I love it a lot because I think the twist, they did something different. The Bond girl as the Bond villain. Didn't expect that them to do a twist like that. Watching it for the first time. And playing the video game based off it was shocking as well. and by the way, I want to give a shout out to the amazing interview you guys did with John Seru.
John Seru, Gabor.
Who played Gabor. I love that interview. He's a great wrestling fan. And by the way, great wrestling fan too. I want to put that on there. It was I enjoyed it. I'm very happy this movie getting a renaissance. Yeah. I'm glad people starting to put over Denise Richards as Christmas Jones, as people starting to understand she's a fun character. I'm glad a lot of people are really starting to have a renaissance praise for it. Dave Sarisky did a video praising it, and still waiting for Calvin Dyson's in-depth review this month. The World Is Not Enough review, but that's going to be fun. I'm very happy this movie getting a renaissance.
Yeah, because a lot of them, they have it, but I don't know. It's taken a long time, hasn't it? 25 years.
Yes, because I used to, back in the day, like coming on the internet, I used to get criticized. Them at we were still in the Daniel Craig universe. At the time, I couldn't tell nobody I liked this movie because at the time people were still, didn't like the Brosnan era at the time. People were so into the Daniel Craig universe, and I used to make fun of. I tell people The World Is Not Enough one of my favorites, and people used to criticize me. And I understand everybody got different tastes. Everybody got their different own favorite type of Bond film that they like. No one should not judge nobody or make fun of them of a Bond movie that they like because this series has a movie for everybody.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? But this film has got everything, hasn't it? It's got one of the most amazing villains, and it's also got.
I think Renaud and Electric King are both great villains. Yes, we know Renaud is set up to be the villain, but he's up the henchman. And Electric King is the main villain, the Bond girl main villain. I think that was a really good twist. It's not perfect. I think the execution of it, I think it works very well. And I want to put over Pierce Brosnan in this one. I think it's his best performance. Yes. I think he's on top of his game in this movie. It's probably one of my favorite performances by him. He is so competent and cool as James Bond in this movie. He really is the character in this movie.
He is, isn't he? Because do you think this is the first time Bond has really fallen in love since On Her Majesty's?
This movie does a great job paying homage to Her Majesty's, definitely with Electra and Tracy. I think it does a great job paying homage to Her Majesty's Secret Service. Definitely with the Steve scene in the Bond relationship with Electra. Yes, you can see Bond a little bit. He does have a little bit feelings for her, but he sees something that's not right with her. Yeah. And I like Dave Risky said in his review, he said about Electra being a manipulator.
Yes, she is.
She never noticed that for years. How many times I've seen this movie? She setting things up with Bond. Being a manipulator. I think that's really intriguing.
Yeah, it's a different kind of film like that, and it meant that there would be more twists in the next ones, like Rosamund Pike, of course.
Yes, and Die Another Day, she's the twist of being working with Gustav Graves. I think that was very interesting in Die Another Day as well.
Yeah.
What David Arnold music?
Yeah,
I think the music in this movie is great. I love every single music cue in this movie, the boat chase sequence. I love the opening title scene by Shirley Manson, Garbage. Yeah. One of my favorites. The title sequence is great. I think the action sequence in this movie is super underrated. I would say it's fun. I think the boat chase, everybody loves. I think the steam chase, the Powerhawks is very fun.
Yeah.
I think the Carry-Out Factory is one of my favorite action sequences in the movie. I love the Carry-Out Factory with Valentin Tarkovsky Carry-Out Factory. It is so fun. The electric torture sequence was fun. I think this movie have everything.
It does. It does. Why don't
you
people
got great?
Yeah.
You got a great retirement. I got put over Q. Devin Wren performance is Q. His retirement is so powerful. Always try to teach you two things. First, never let them see you bleed. Always have an escape plan. You have a new assistant replacement. John Cleese is R. I wish we could see more of him in the movie continuity, but they had to reboot it. So at least in the video game, he got a chance to play Q, and I think he did a wonderful job.
Yeah, I'd love to go back to the late 90s and early 2000s and have more.
2 years. Yeah. 2 years apart. I just can't believe that at the time they would crank them every 2 years apart to get GoldenEye in 95, Tomorrow Dies in 97, The World in 99. That's just amazing.
Yeah. And really, bold, ambitious films with big stories, and they still only needed 2 years to do them.
Yes, and then we got Die Another Day, 2002. I mean, they would just crank them. They knew how the successful Bond was at the time. People wanted it, and we loved it at the time. I loved it at the time. Bond. Say it forward. This movie made me a fan of all the movies. I used to watch the movies on every holiday season, on Fight TV, like holiday marathon of the Bond movies. This is just amazing to get you hyped up for the next movie coming out. So that used to be a fun thing back in the day.
Well, let's hope for more, Lorenzo. But
I hope we get it. I hope we get it.
Yeah. I want to ask you, how many times do you reckon you've seen The World Is Not Enough?
I think all my lifetime. I've seen The World Is Not Enough. How about a bunch of times? I've seen it on TV a bunch of times. I've seen it on DVD a bunch of times. Every time it's on, I'm always in the mood to watch it.
Good man. And do you think it's your favourite Bond film now?
It's one of my favorites. It's one of my go-to entertaining guilty pleasures type of Bond movie that I just love to go back to watch. It have everything that you want. Got a great twist. You got great Bond girl, great action, great music, and good. Like great Michael Acton. I want to praise him for a guy who did not like documentary in his career to do an action thriller like this. I think he did a phenomenal job.
Yeah, he did. He did.
And the second unit, Vic Armstrong and his crew, they did a phenomenal job with the action sequence in this movie as well. I think everybody who works on this movie deserves a lot of praise, but they gave us something entertaining. I'm glad Christmas Jones is getting a lot of love.
Yes, she is.
Well deserved.
I think in another 25 years, people are going to say it's a masterpiece. Maybe you never know.
I think it is. I mean, people all the time. People with movies start to change. I mean, look at a lot of people love Octopussy. That's one of my favorites. A lot of people movies that are underrated and people say negativism. Things people like about them. Everyone have a favorite. That's why we love this movie franchise, and I'm happy to celebrate The World Is Not Enough 25th anniversary.
We couldn't have it without you. We can't have The World Is Not Enough.
I want to give a shout out to you guys. Podcast episodes on The World Is Not Enough back in 2020 or 2021 when I found y'all podcast. I was so happy you guys reviewed it because I'm very happy to find someone who liked this movie. And you guys did a great job.
John is obsessed with it. John, it's one of his favorites.
Yes, he's on the World's Not Enough fan like me, Calvin, and other people.
¡Policía! ¡Del piso de arriba! ¡Abran la puerta! ¡Policía! ¡Policía, abran la puerta!
It's definitely up there. Fabulous boat chase, really good Brosnan performance. Like I say, it's his third one. It does fit that the third is where they hit the peak. Say brilliant villainess, excellent music. I honestly can't fault it.
Brilliant.
Really can't fault it.
Me and Harry watched it with Mum and Dad.
No one forgets it. No one remembers this
on
film.
like New Year's Day at the cottage.
How was it?
Yeah, and they were, even though they'd already seen it, they were interested, and obviously, with the like twists and turns and the love story and everything like that. It is really interesting. And I can't remember who, I think Sam said it before, because you were talking about the cinema savvy, and the Mount Rushmore of Bond films that you do, while some stuff may have dated, it is quite a good film to show someone, who hasn't maybe seen it before and stuff.
Would it be on anyone's Mount Rushmore? Because if you do it mathematically and there's 4, you have one from each of the top 4 actors who did the most films, you could say. So then most people for Pierce would choose GoldenEye. It's vying for that place, I suppose, if you do it like that.
It depends. It depends what you're counting as a Mount Rushmore. If you're counting your favourites or if you're counting the most iconic. Because I wouldn't say it's particularly the most iconic, because we're all talking about it being underrated.
I think the description of what it is depends on kind of what you're going for. I think when I was speaking with George about it, we were kind of wondering, he was just saying go with what you think it is, and with me it was a mix of what I believe is, could be objectively great, things that kind of had a lot of impact at the time, and what are my favorites, and put that together. Which films am I spitting out? And unfortunately, Wars Not Enough was not in that, but GoldenEye was. If I was going to pick one Pierce Brosnan, I think it's just because more components come together. I think in the zeitgeist, it changed everything. And I think in terms of its longevity, it has a better reputation. And I think also it's just one of the best ones, full stop. Whereas World Is Not Enough, I think there's just obviously some issues that people have, which means that it can't get any higher than it does. For me, it's always the second behind GoldenEye, but it's always in the top 10. I think it's like my number 6 or something. It's a really strong film for me, and I always find it difficult for people to really insist why this should be like below 20. I think that's an insane, opinion to have. Of course, people have their opinions in it. It is what it is, but I just, compared to some of the others, I'd be like, I don't understand, but I think we've all mentioned reasons why, why it's so good. I think, there'll always be fans like us of the film anyway.
Yeah, I can understand why people like others more.
Yeah.
But it usually comes in, 18, 19, something like that. And to say that it's forgettable, that's the one that annoys me. Because if you've watched it recently, you that would certainly mean, hang on, whoa. There's loads more going on than I remembered from 99 if you haven't seen it since then.
Yeah.
You can't say it isn't ambitious. As John said previously, this is the one where it's coming off the back of 2 return to classic Bond, really successful. Why change it? Why risk it? Why do something like this love story and M on a personal mission? They didn't have to do it. So I think it deserves credit for that.
It's got to be around the 5 or 6 mark.
Well, again, brilliant.
I think 5 or 6 are always interchangeable, but I may be biased because it was the first one I saw in the cinema. Everyone goes to GoldenEye when it comes to Pierce, and apart from the video game, which I loved, I don't enjoy it as much as if I'm going to put a Pierce Brosnan film on. It's this one.
Yeah.
I love the storyline. I think it's really thought out. I honestly do think it's his best outing. His best scene, I think, is the highlight of the film for me is when he goes in the casino and you've got the big henchman before he puts his glasses on, giving the big I am, and he just orders a vodka martini, and he just doesn't look like he's not going to break a sweat, and that's him.
Yeah.
That he knows who he is, and that's why I feel at that moment he's like, you know what, he's got this role down to a T. He's in his element now.
Vodka martini. Shaken, not stirred. Tell him James Bond is here. Now.
I don't think you heard me. Mr. Zukovsky will be delighted to see you. After you.
No. After you. I insist.
There's so much swagger, isn't there? Right from the start with his glasses on in Bilbao, he's absolutely loving being James Bond, isn't he?
Yeah.
I'll tell you, he's just like, because you can leave with your life, or yeah, he knows who he is and he plays it perfectly.
Like to give credit where it's due, where like I say that they're trying to do something different. I think they've found their feet with the first two, and they decided to be a little bit bolder with the films. And I always welcome that. I think that it's good to, particularly when the franchise has been going for so long, is that you do get to mix things up a little bit. And I think this does it almost in a sort of textbook way, because it makes really interesting sort of bold changes, adds more to the plot, adds more to the characterization, but ultimately remains a Bond film. And like we said before about that, you still get those moments that only happen in Bond films that you do sort of expect, and it keeps you kind of like, oh right, yeah, but we've not thrown everything out with a reboot or anything along those lines. So I always really sort of really enjoyed it, and I think it's one that I keep coming back to because it is much more richer than in terms of the writing than the others. It's still obviously GoldenEye is for me because that was I don't know. Maybe it's just down to the directing, but it has more sort of momentum. It has more kind of it moves along with a bit more about it than this does. And the part of me wishes that the world is not enough actually downplayed the action and was more of a sort of straight kind of spy kind of thriller drama. I think that's where its strengths really are, is that plot, and I think that's where Apted was at its best. And I think that it's definitely kind of one of my favourites, and it's because of the acting, because of the story, and I think because they try to do something different. But maybe there is a tad too much drum and bass for my taste.
Almost to my shame, but not to my shame. There are some that I like. Say it's got to about 9 o'clock on a Saturday night, and I don't want to find something new to watch. I want to put something on that I'm familiar with, and that I would, there are various Bond films that I think fit that brief. Maybe not exactly the same as like a Sunday afternoon. So I don't think this is maybe quite a Sunday afternoon, but I find it a Saturday night Bond. But I think it's more than that, because I think Tomorrow Never Dies is like the ultimate of that, because it's just a 90s action film that rattles along at a really good pace. And I almost think of this as like, not a sequel to Tomorrow Never Dies, but sort of linked, like similar font. They've done a similar font on the, it was David Arnold and Robinson, all that. But this really is, it is underrated. I do think it still is. And I know everyone's saying it's underrated, Olivier Giroud for Griff. Everyone used to say he was underrated. So it's like, he can't be underrated because everyone, but anyway, I do still think it is, because, like you say, it gets. I'm not a fan of rankings, but it gets really low down, and it does get those comments like, I just don't, it's just not that interesting, or it's. I don't know whether not formulate. I don't know whether people actually say that, but it really is an interesting film, and does something that we haven't seen before or since.
Yeah.
And it does it well, and it does have its the things that it doesn't do quite as well as other bits, but the bits it gets right really, really well. And I think probably it is Pierce's best performance. And I think, Sophie Marceau as Electra King is one of the best female performances that we've ever seen in a Bond film to this day, and when we're looking at stuff for Bond 26 or Bond and Beyond, there's stuff here that you could look, I don't mean just copy, because I know there's quite a bit of Skyfall is a bit like, but I just mean, the sort of the little twists on the form. You're not changing things completely, just those little twists that keep it fresh and everything. And this does it perfectly.
And even scholars like Tom Mason rate it really highly. So there you go.
Apparently, yeah, right. Because while we've been talking, I've done the incredibly arbitrary sort of.
Oh right, yeah.
No one's ever done that before. Again, it's so arbitrary, but gives you like 30 pairs of obviously which would you rather watch right now. And well, it's not enough to come out at 4, so that's pretty high. I mean, I won't. Excuse me. I will say the other top 5 because it's unhinged. So like number 1 was Tomorrow Never Dies, 2 was Moonraker, 3 was You Only Live Twice, and 5 was Casino Royale, which probably gives you a bit of an insight into my brain and how I like to approach these films. It's like it's not, it's not the most shall we say, like nuanced maybe selection of films. I like over the top action apparently, and if anything, I was going to say The World's Not Enough feels like a bit of a, other than Casino Royale, that feels like the odd one out there because obviously 2 and 3 are like Lewis Gilbert. I mean, Spy Who Loved Me I think was like just outside. I think I was like 6th. So I do love the big over the top set pieces, and as we were talking about like much earlier on, there is a lot of action in this, but I think when you compare it to Tomorrow Never Dies, which is my personal favorite, I love just because it is just like when the makers of Quantum of Solace, I can't remember whether it was the director or somebody else involved that was saying they wanted to make the film feel like a bullet, and I think because I explained the quick editing and things, I think that maybe didn't work 100%, but Tomorrow Never Dies does feel like a bullet to me. Like you say, it's non-stop. It feels like it lasts about half an hour when it's 2 hours long. And The World's Not Enough is similar. I mean, there is action. It's a Brosnan Bond film, and there's big action set pieces, but it has got that slower, more emotional side to it, which I really like. And I totally agree that and Tomorrow Never Dies, they do feel like very similar films, almost like, I mean, not quite a duology, because obviously there's different directors and that sort of thing. And I think Apted and Spotswood's styles are very different in a lot of ways, particularly for how they film action, but also how they film like the dialogue scenes. But they do feel like they really go together. And to me, like GoldenEye and Die Another Day are much more like the odd ones out of the Brosnan era for varying reasons. But those two, I think, work really well. And I think they took everything that worked with Tomorrow Never Dies and refined it a little bit. And like I say, personally, I prefer the former film, but I do love this one as well. And I think it's a lot more mature than a lot of people give it credit for, because I think there's this viewpoint that, which is partly true and partly probably due to my, like I say, Tomorrow Never Dies, which I love, that the Brosnan films are a lot of just action and mindless, and that's where Bond was going like full-on blockbuster and that sort of thing. And the Craig era brought this stuff back down. But as I was saying when we were talking about the script, a lot of these Purvis and Wade ideas from the Craig era found their genesis in their Brosnan work, particularly in The World's Not Enough. I think you can trace a lot of that Craig emotional beat lineage back to their early work. They've recycled a lot of the same stuff. So yeah, I'm pleased it's getting more recognition, and in the sense that, to say, as you were saying, to say it's underrated is a bit of a meme now, but it still is. Like, I do wish that people would say it's probably the Craig, other than some of the Craig films, it's probably the one that's got the most emotional heft, and I do love it as a film and as a Bond film. I think it's fantastic.
I think if you're still watching at this stage or listening, then you probably don't think it's underrated. But the fact that it's not, even as the anniversary films. This year, of course, this is the 25th anniversary of The World Is Not Enough. Even that hasn't had anything, really, has it? Like, for me, 25 is a big number for an anniversary, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whereas, of course, Goldfinger is going to take the main plaudits. But even The Man with the Golden Gun has had way more attention than the World Is Not Enough 25th. I'm glad, because that, again, that is underrated for me. But that's more underrated amongst Bond fans. I think in the wider community of cinema goers, that people do like that film. They know it. It's got loads of iconic moments and things. But for the wider cinema community, The World Is Not Enough isn't as well known. Yet, we said this, I think, maybe on another episode, if you could, what immediately pops into your head with this film, I think most people would say the boat chase on the Thames. I think it would. That's probably the thing you associate with it most.
Yeah.
My word, there's a heck of a lot more to it. So I do, again, if you're just picking this up for some reason, you've been watching for hours, do watch it again. I mean, I'd love to just pop it on now because it's the one that I don't know. It's not that when I do watch it, I think, oh, it wasn't quite as good as I remembered. It's the one when I haven't watched it for a bit. I'm always thinking about it, and I'm thinking, right, I need to revisit that. I missed that last time. So there's endless stuff to chat about with it. There's an awful lot going on. I do think it's really well paced, and I think that, yeah, if you haven't seen it for a while, whack it on, and it's 25 years on now, so it deserves its place in Bond history, and we could do a lot worse than try and come up with many of the themes in this one for future Bonds. So happy birthday, The World Is Not Enough. Swine.
Always wanted to have Christmas in Turkey.
Was that a Christmas joke?
For me? No. Never.
So isn't it time you unwrapped your present?
Oh, I think so.
Look, what's that?
The car.
So he must be nearby.
Where? Where?
It picks up body heat so humans come out orange. There.
I thought you said he was with Dr. Jones. It's getting redder.
Must be a premature form of the Millennium Bug. What's wrong about you?
Yeah? How so?
I thought Christmas only comes once a year.